The river whispered its ancient song as dawn broke over the frontier. Golden light spilled across the water's surface, catching on ripples that flowed endlessly toward the horizon. Birds called to one another in the trees that lined the banks, their voices carrying on the cool morning air. Then came the scream. It tore through the peaceful morning like a knife, echoing off the water. A young woman thrashed in the current, her dress billowing around her like a pale flower. The river had seemed calm from the shore, but its heart held deadly currents that now dragged her under, then thrust her back to the surface, gasping and desperate. "Help!" she cried, her voice growing weaker as the water pulled her downstream. Her fingers clawed at passing branches, breaking them off in her panic. "Please, someone." No one was there to hear. No one except the silent figure watching from the shadow of the pines. He moved like water himself, muscles sliding beneath copper skin as he sprinted along the riverbank. His moccasins made no sound on the earth. His eyes never left the struggling woman as she disappeared beneath the surface again. When she didn't resurface, he didn't hesitate. He dove from the high bank, cutting through the water with the precision of an arrow. Beneath the surface, he spotted her, a pale shape sinking into the murky depths, hair floating around her face like river weeds. Her eyes were closed, bubbles escaping from her lips. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, and he kicked hard against the current. They broke the surface together, the woman limp against his chest. He turned her face skyward, swimming backward with one arm while holding her above water. On the bank, he laid her down gently. She wasn't breathing. He pressed against her chest, forcing the river from her lungs. Once. Twice. On the third push, she convulsed, water spilling from her mouth as she gasped for air. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on the face above her. Dark eyes met blue ones. Recognition dawned in her expression, not of him specifically, but of what he was. An Indian. A brave from one of the tribes her people feared. She didn't scream again. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, droplets falling from his long black hair onto the earth. Neither knew in that moment how their lives had just entangled, or how the secret her father had buried long ago would soon rise to the surface, much like she had from the river's depths. A secret that would shake the foundations of 3 tribes and change the course of their lives forever. The settlement of Rivercross stood like a scar on the landscape, a collection of wooden buildings and fenced fields carved from the wilderness. Smoke rose from stone chimneys, and the sounds of hammers and saws filled the air as men expanded the boundaries of what they called civilization. Eliza Thornton sat at her bedroom window, watching the activity in the street below. 3 days had passed since her near drowning, but she could still feel the river in her lungs sometimes, could still see those dark eyes looking down at her when she closed her own. "Eliza." Her father's voice carried up the stairs. "Are you decent? Reverend Walsh is here to see you." She sighed, smoothing her dress. Another concerned visitor come to check on William Thornton's daughter, the girl who'd nearly drowned. The girl saved by a savage. Except he hadn't been savage at all. "Coming, father," she called back, pinning her honey-blonde hair into a simple arrangement at the nape of her neck. Eliza was not what most would call a traditional beauty. Her features were too strong, her gaze too direct. At 22, she remained unmarried despite her father's position as one of the settlement's founders and most prosperous traders. The local men found her intimidating. She spoke her mind too freely and showed more interest in books than baking. She descended the stairs, nodding politely to Reverend Walsh, who clutched his Bible like a shield. "Miss Thornton," he said, "praise the Lord for your deliverance from the waters." "Yes," she replied, "and praise the Indian who pulled me from them." The Reverend's expression soured. Her father shot her a warning look from behind his desk. William Thornton was a bear of a man with a thick beard streaked with gray and hands hardened by years of labor before he'd become successful. The cabin they lived in was the finest in Rivercross, with real glass windows and 2 stories. He built it all himself, including the trading post attached to its side. "Eliza," he said, his voice carrying that edge she knew well, "the Reverend doesn't need to hear your foolishness." "Is gratitude foolish, father?" The Reverend cleared his throat. "While we can acknowledge the instrument of your rescue, we must remember that it was God's hand guiding all events." Eliza bit her tongue. She'd had this conversation too many times in the past days. Everyone wanted to diminish what had happened, to erase the debt owed to a man they saw as less than themselves. "Of course, Reverend," she said finally, her words clipped. Miles away, in a clearing hidden from settler eyes, Cale moved through the morning rituals of his people. The Okanawee tribe had lived in these hills for generations, long before the white men came with their fences and their strange ideas about owning the earth. Cale was the son of the tribe's war chief, Maka, but he had never embraced his father's hatred of the settlers. He'd seen too much bloodshed already in his 25 summers. His mother had been a healer, teaching him that all life was sacred before disease brought by the settlers had taken her 3 winters ago. "You were distracted today," said Niobe, his cousin, as they collected water from the stream that fed into the larger river. "Is it because of the white woman?" Kale's hand stilled on the water skin. "Word travels fast. Adawit saw you from the hunting ridge." Niobe's dark eyes studied him. "He said you dove into the angry waters for her. I would have done the same for anyone. But it wasn't anyone. It was one of them." She didn't need to elaborate. Them. The people who pushed the Okanawe further into the hills each season. The people who brought disease and death. "She was drowning," Kale said simply. "The river does not care what color skin it claims." Niobe sighed. "The council is talking. Some say you should not have interfered. That the river was taking what belonged to it." Kale straightened, water dripping from the filled skin. "Then the council is wrong." His cousin gave him a sad smile. "Be careful, Kale. Your heart sees paths that others cannot follow." Back at the village, tension hung in the air like smoke. The Okanawe were not the only tribe in these lands. To the north were the Shoshone, traditional enemies who had recently extended an offer of alliance against the encroaching settlers. To the east were the Arapaho, who had already lost much of their territory and warned that the Okanawe would be next. Kale's father sat with the tribal elders around the council fire, their faces grave. The white men pushed further into the hunting grounds, Maka was saying as Kale approached. "The Shoshone speak truth in this. If we do not stand together, we will fall separately. The Shoshone have stolen our horses and our women for generations," argued Takota, the oldest of the elders. "Can a snake change its nature because a bigger threat appears?" "My son," Maka said, noticing Kale. "Come, tell the council what you saw at the river settlement." Kale set down the water skin and joined the circle, aware of the weight of their expectations. His father wanted reports of weakness, of opportunity. Kale had always been his eyes among the settlers, watching from the shadows. "They build more cabins," he said. "Their numbers grow with each moon." "And their weapons?" asked another elder. "Many rifles. More than before." Maka nodded, satisfied. "We must decide soon. The Shoshone will not wait forever for our answer." As the council continued their debate, Kale's thoughts drifted back to the river, to Blue Eyes looking up at him with something other than fear. Something that felt like a beginning. 3 days later, a young boy from the settlement approached the Thornton house, looking nervous as he clutched a folded piece of bark cloth in his hand. Eliza was in the garden behind the house when she heard him asking for her at the front door. "I'm Eliza Thornton," she said, coming around the corner, wiping soil from her hands. The boy, no more than 12, glanced around as if afraid of being seen. "This is for you, miss." He thrust the bark cloth forward. "A man at the edge of the woods gave me a silver coin to deliver it." Eliza took the strange package, her heart quickening. "What man?" "An Indian, miss." The boy was already backing away. "Tall, with a scar here." He touched his left eyebrow. Before she could ask more, the boy darted away, disappearing between the buildings of the settlement. Eliza unfolded the bark cloth carefully. Inside was a small bundle of herbs tied with sinew, their scent sharp and clean. Beneath them lay a piece of paper, real paper, not bark or hide, with words written in a careful, unpracticed hand. 3 nights from now. Peace gathering. Where the 3 rivers meet. Come if you wish to understand. There was no signature, but a small mark at the bottom resembled a hawk in flight. Eliza's fingers trembled as she refolded the message. She knew the place. 3 Rivers Point was a landmark, a day's ride from the settlement. And she knew who had sent it. The same dark eyes that had looked into hers as water spilled from her lungs. That evening, she approached her father as he sat by the fire, reviewing his ledgers. "Father," she began carefully, "I've heard talk of a peace gathering between some of the tribes and settlers. At 3 Rivers Point." William Thornton's hand stilled on the page. "Where did you hear this?" "Around the settlement." The lie came easily. "Is it true?" Her father closed the ledger with deliberate slowness. "Some fool settlers think they can make peace with savages who only understand strength." His voice had that hard edge again. "No one from Rivercross will attend such nonsense. But if it could prevent bloodshed." "Enough, Eliza." He stood, towering over her. "Those Indians are not to be trusted. They killed your mother, or have you forgotten?" The familiar pain lanced through her. "Of course I haven't forgotten." Her mother had died 12 years ago, when their wagon train was attacked on the journey west. Eliza had been 10, hiding beneath the wagon as arrows flew and men shouted. She still had nightmares sometimes. Then you understand why I forbid you from even thinking about this gathering. He placed heavy hands on her shoulders. Promise me, Eliza. Promise you won't go near that place. She looked into his eyes, seeing the grief and anger that had never faded. I promise, Father. Another lie. Because something pulled at her, something stronger than fear or obedience. I need to understand, to see the man who had saved her life, to hear what he had to say. 3 nights later, Eliza slipped from her bedroom window after her father had fallen asleep. She wore riding clothes beneath her cloak, men's trousers she'd altered to fit her frame, practical for the journey ahead. Her mare, Penny, waited in the small stable behind their house. The night embraced her as she rode away from Rivercross, following the river north toward the meeting place. Stars wheeled overhead, and owls called from the darkness. Fear and excitement battled in her chest. What she was doing was dangerous, perhaps foolish. Yet she couldn't turn back. As dawn broke, she reached 3 Rivers Point, where 2 smaller waterways joined the main river in a peaceful confluence. In the growing light, she saw them. Dozens of teepees set up in the meadow, smoke rising from cooking fires. People moved among them, some in traditional dress, others in a mixture of native and settler clothing. Eliza hesitated at the tree line, suddenly aware of how alone she was. What if this was a trap? What if you came? She whirled around. He stood 10 paces away, the rising sun illuminating his features. The same man who had pulled her from the river. Up close, she could see the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the quiet strength in his stance. You invited me, she replied, finding her voice. Though not very directly. A slight smile touched his lips. I am Cale of the Okanawee. And you are Eliza Thornton, daughter of the trader. You know my name. I know many things about Rivercross. He gestured toward the encampment. This gathering is to share knowledge, to find common ground. 3 tribes who have been enemies now talk of alliance, not for war, but for survival. Eliza glanced at the camp again. My father forbade anyone from Rivercross to attend. Yet here you stand. Cale studied her. Why? The question hung between them, demanding honesty she wasn't sure she possessed. Finally, she said, I wanted to thank you properly. And I wanted to see for myself what my father fears so much. Cale nodded, as if her answer satisfied something in him. Then come. See with your own eyes. He turned and walked toward the camp, not looking back to check if she followed. After a moment's hesitation, Eliza tied Penny to a tree and stepped out of the shadows, following the man who had saved her life into a world she'd been taught to fear. The camp was alive with activity as Eliza followed Cale through the maze of teepees and cooking fires. Children ran between the structures, laughing and playing games with sticks and small leather balls. Women worked at various tasks, some cooking, others scraping hides or weaving baskets. Men sat in circles, talking in low voices or crafting weapons and tools. What struck Eliza most was how ordinary it all seemed. These people her father called savages lived lives of purpose and community, not so different from the settlers in many ways. They're staring at me, she murmured to Cale as they passed a group of women who paused in their work to watch her. You are the first white woman many of them have seen up close without fear between you, he replied. And you wear men's clothing. Eliza's cheeks warmed. They're practical for riding. The Okanawee women would agree. There was amusement in his voice. Our women ride as well as men. They approached a large teepee in the center of the camp. Outside, an old man sat on a woven mat, his face deeply lined, his hair white as snow. He looked up as they approached, his dark eyes sharp and assessing. Grandfather, Cale said respectfully in English, clearly for Eliza's benefit. This is the woman from the river. The old man nodded slowly. I am Takota, elder of the Okanawee. Sit, daughter of the settlers. Eliza hesitated, then lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the ground before him. Cale remained standing, a silent presence at her side. You have courage to come alone, Takota said, his English heavily accented but clear. Or perhaps foolishness. Perhaps both, Eliza admitted. I wanted to understand. Understand what? Why there cannot be peace between our peoples. Takota's weathered face remained impassive. Ask your father this question. Something in his tone made Eliza look up sharply. What do you mean? The old man exchanged a glance with Cale. It is not my story to tell. But you are here now, at the gathering of 3 tribes. Listen, learn, then decide what kind of bridge you wish to be. Before Eliza could press for more, a commotion arose from the edge of the camp. Voices raised in alarm, and people began moving toward the disturbance. Stay here, Cale instructed, then strode toward the noise, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Eliza ignored his command, rising to follow at a distance. At the camp's edge, a group of men had surrounded two newcomers, Indians from their dress, but not Okanawee. Their clothing was different, their faces painted with red and black streaks. Shoshone, whispered a woman standing near Eliza. They come to speak with the council. Cale had joined a circle of men who seemed to be leaders, facing the Shoshone visitors. Words were exchanged in a language Eliza couldn't understand, but the tension was palpable. One of the Shoshone, taller than the rest, kept gesturing toward the north, his voice rising. What are they saying? Eliza asked the woman beside her. The woman glanced at her, surprised to be addressed directly. After a moment's hesitation, she answered, They bring news of white soldiers moving into Shoshone hunting grounds. They say the time for talk is ending, that action must come now. Eliza felt a chill. Soldiers meant the U.S. cavalry. If they were moving into tribal territories without warning, it could spark the very conflict this gathering sought to prevent. The discussion grew more heated. Cale stood slightly apart from the other Okanawee leaders, his posture suggesting disagreement. Finally, the tall Shoshone spat on the ground and turned away, his companion following. They mounted horses at the edge of the clearing and rode off at a gallop. The crowd dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves. Cale returned to where Eliza waited, his expression troubled. What happened? She asked. The balance shifts, he said grimly. The Shoshone report soldiers burning villages north of here. They call for all tribes to unite in war. And what do the Okanawee say? Cale's eyes met hers. My father and most of the council agree. I do not. You oppose war? I oppose certain death. He looked across the camp, where men were now gathering weapons, checking bowstrings and arrows. The white man's army cannot be defeated by our bows, no matter how many tribes stand together. Eliza felt the weight of his words. I could warn the settlement about the soldiers. Perhaps they could send messages, prevent misunderstandings. Your father would use such information to call for our destruction, Cale said bluntly. He has no love for any Indian. You don't know him, Eliza protested, though something inside her whispered that Cale might be right. I know more than you think. Cale's voice softened slightly. Come. The gathering continues despite this news. There is much you should see before you return home. Throughout the day, Cale guided Eliza through the camp, introducing her to people from all three tribes, Okanawee, Arapaho, and a small group of peaceful Shoshone who disagreed with their more warlike brothers. She learned how they lived, how they viewed the world. She shared meals with women who initially eyed her with suspicion but gradually accepted her presence. As evening approached, a ceremony began. Drums beat a hypnotic rhythm as dancers in elaborate costumes moved around a central fire. Eliza sat beside Cale, mesmerized by the display. What does it mean? She asked as a dancer wearing an antlered headdress leaped through the flames. It tells the story of our creation, Cale explained. How the Great Spirit brought the three tribes from the stars to this land. It's beautiful, Eliza murmured. Yes. But Cale wasn't looking at the dancers. He was looking at her, at the firelight playing across her features. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. Eliza looked away first, her heart beating faster than the drums. Later, as the moon rose high, Cale walked her back to where Penny was tethered at the edge of the clearing. You should return before your absence is discovered, he said. The trail is clear in the moonlight. Eliza nodded, but made no move to mount her horse. Will there be war, Cale? He was silent for a long moment. I don't know. Much depends on what happens in the coming days. I wish. She trailed off, unsure what she wished for. That she'd never fallen in the river? That he'd never saved her? That the world was different than it was? There is a place, Cale said suddenly. Sacred to my people. Few outsiders have seen it. If you wish to understand more, meet me there in 3 days' time. He described a rock formation to the east of River Cross. Come alone, as you did today. Why would you show me a sacred place? Cale's expression was unreadable in the moonlight. Because you came here seeking understanding. Because you look at my people and see people, not savages. Because. He hesitated. Because the river brought us together for a reason. Eliza mounted her horse, looking down at him. 3 days, she agreed. As she rode away, she glanced back once to see him standing motionless, watching her go. Something had changed in her today, some fundamental understanding of the world and her place in it. She had crossed a boundary and could never return to who she had been before. The lights of River Cross appeared in the distance as she approached in the deep of night. Eliza slowed Penny to a walk, mentally rehearsing her explanation if she were discovered. But the settlement slept, and she returned Penny to her stable without incident. Climbing back through her bedroom window, Eliza removed her riding clothes and hid them beneath her bed. As she slipped between her sheets, exhaustion overtook her. But her dreams were filled with dancing figures, drumbeats, and dark eyes that seemed to see into her soul. The next morning, Eliza moved through her chores with distracted efficiency, her mind still at the gathering. Her father watched her closely at breakfast, as if sensing the change in her. "You're quiet today," he observed, buttering a piece of bread. "Feeling unwell?" "Just tired, father." She forced a smile. "I didn't sleep well." William Thornton nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Stay close to home today. There's talk of Indian trouble to the north." Eliza's hand stilled on her teacup. "What kind of trouble?" "Nothing for you to worry about." He rose from the table. "I have a meeting with some of the men. Don't wait dinner for me." After he left, Eliza went to the trading post, ostensibly to help with inventory. In reality, she wanted to hear what the men of Rivercross were saying about the Indian trouble. She worked quietly in the storeroom. The door cracked open to the main shop where her father met with 5 other men, the settlement's unofficial leadership. Cavalry sent word, one man was saying. "They're clearing out some Shoshone camps that have been raiding supply wagons." "About time," said another. "Should have done it years ago." "The problem," her father's deep voice cut in, "is that it won't stop with the Shoshone. There's talk of the tribes uniting." "Let them unite," scoffed someone. "More efficient to kill them all at once." Eliza's stomach turned at the casual cruelty. "Don't be a fool, Parker," her father snapped. "United, they could cause real damage before they're put down. We need to be prepared." "What do you suggest, Thornton?" "Double the watch. No one travels alone. And we might consider a preemptive action." "What kind of action?" There was a pause. "There's a gathering place where the 3 rivers meet. My sources say representatives from several tribes are meeting there. If we could convince the cavalry to strike there." Eliza nearly dropped the ledger she was holding. They were talking about attacking the very gathering she had just attended, where children played and women worked, where people sought peace. "Your sources?" someone asked. "You have an Indian informant, Thornton?" "I have my ways," her father replied evasively. "The point is, we have an opportunity to end this threat before it truly begins." The men continued talking, but Eliza had heard enough. She slipped out the back door of the storeroom, her mind racing. Her father was plotting to attack people who had shown her nothing but hospitality. People who included Cale. She had to warn them. But how? She couldn't leave again so soon without raising suspicion. And if her father discovered her betrayal? For the next 2 days, Eliza watched and waited, gathering what information she could. The men of Rivercross sent a messenger to the nearest cavalry outpost, though she couldn't learn what the message contained. Her father was increasingly absent, returning home late with no explanation for where he'd been. On the morning of the 3rd day, when she was meant to meet Cale at the sacred place, Eliza rose before dawn. She dressed in her riding clothes beneath a simple dress that could be quickly removed. She packed a small bag with food and a water skin, hiding it in the stable. At breakfast, she told her father she planned to visit her friend Sarah on the other side of the settlement. "Be back before dark," he said distractedly, his mind clearly elsewhere. "Yes, father." She kissed his cheek, fighting the guilt that threatened to overwhelm her. Was she betraying her own people? Or preventing a terrible injustice? Once out of sight of their home, Eliza made her way to the stable, changed quickly, and rode east through the morning mist, following Cale's directions to the sacred place. The rock formation rose from the earth like the spine of some ancient beast, red stone glowing in the morning light. Eliza approached cautiously, tethering Penny to a scrub tree at the base of the formation. She saw no sign of Cale. Following a narrow path that wound between the rocks, she emerged into a hidden clearing. At its center stood a circle of standing stones, each carved with symbols she didn't recognize. Beyond them, the mouth of a cave opened in the rock face. "Cale?" she called softly, her voice echoing slightly. No answer came. She moved closer to the standing stones, drawn by the strange carvings. They seemed to tell a story, figures hunting, fighting, living. As she circled the stones, the narrative became clearer. 3 distinct groups of people, represented by different symbols, engaged in what appeared to be a great battle. The final stone showed a single figure standing between the groups, arms outstretched as if to separate them. At the figure's feet lay what looked like bodies. "The peacemaker," came Cale's voice from behind her. Eliza turned to find him standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her with an unreadable expression. "You came," he said. "I had to." She stepped toward him urgently. "Cale, my father and the men of Rivercross, they know about the gathering. They've sent for the cavalry. I think they plan to attack." His face hardened. When? I don't know exactly. Soon. You have to warn your people. Cale nodded, but made no move to leave. I will. But first, there is something you must see. He gestured toward the cave. Something that belongs to your story as much as mine. Cale, there isn't time. There is always time for truth, Eliza. His eyes held hers. Especially when lives hang in the balance. Reluctantly, she followed him into the cave. Daylight penetrated only a short distance, and Cale lit a torch that had been placed just inside the entrance. The flickering light revealed walls covered in paintings, some clearly ancient, others more recent. This is the story cave, Cale explained as they moved deeper. For generations, our history has been recorded here. The paintings showed the arrival of white settlers, conflicts, disease spreading through native villages. Eliza recognized depictions of events she'd heard about, treaties signed and broken, battles won and lost. Then Cale stopped before a section of wall that seemed more deliberately composed than the others. It showed a wagon train under attack, Indians on horseback surrounding the circled wagons. This is the attack that killed my mother, Eliza whispered, recognition dawning. 12 years ago. Cale nodded solemnly. Yes, but look closer. She stepped forward, studying the detailed scene. The attacking Indians wore the markings of the Shoshone, not the Okanawee as she had always believed. And there, at the edge of the painting, was a figure that made her blood run cold, a white man, standing apart from the wagons, pointing toward them as if directing the attack. The man wore a trader's coat. His beard was painted with precise detail. No, Eliza breathed, stepping back. That can't be right. That's your father, Cale finished quietly. William Thornton led the Shoshone to that wagon train. He arranged the attack. That's a lie. Eliza turned on him, anger flaring. My father lost his wife, my mother, in that attack. Yes, Cale said, his voice gentle but firm. The woman in the central wagon. The Shoshone were told to kill everyone except the trader and his child. But they did not know which woman was his wife. Eliza's legs weakened, and she sank to her knees on the cave floor. Why? She whispered. Why would he do such a thing? The wagon train carried more than settlers, Cale explained, kneeling beside her. It carried government money meant for the Okanawee as payment for land. Your father made a deal with the Shoshone chief, help him steal the money, and he would lead them to the Okanawee village while the warriors were away. No, Eliza shook her head, tears streaming down her face. He wouldn't, he couldn't. The attack on our village killed many, elders, women, children. My grandmother died that day. The Shoshone took our horses and supplies, leaving us to starve through winter. Your father took the money and built his trading empire. How do you know all this? Eliza demanded, desperate to find a flaw in his story. Because there was a survivor from the wagon train. A man who was left for dead but crawled away into the night. He found our hunting party returning to the destroyed village. Before he died of his wounds, he told us everything. Eliza stared at the painting, at the face of her father rendered with damning accuracy. Memories flooded back. How they had joined the wagon train late. How her father had insisted she hide beneath their wagon at the first sign of trouble. How he had emerged from the attack unscathed while others fought and died. How he had always hated Indians with a passion that seemed to go beyond the normal settler prejudice. How he had forbidden her from attending the peace gathering. The money, she said hollowly. Is that why we were never poor like the other new settlers? Why we always had enough to build the biggest house, the trading post? Cale nodded. Your father's wealth is built on betrayal and blood. Blood of my people and yours. Eliza felt as though the ground had opened beneath her. Everything she believed about her life, her father, herself, all of it built on lies. The gathering, she said suddenly, remembering why she had come. If my father is called for the cavalry to attack there, then he seeks to cover his crimes with more blood, Cale finished grimly. The leaders of all three tribes are there, Okanawee, Arapaho, and the peaceful Shoshone faction. If they die, there will be no one left who knows the truth. We have to stop him. Eliza rose to her feet, wiping away tears. I have to stop him. Cale studied her face. You believe me, then? I. She looked again at the painting, at the undeniable evidence before her. Yes. God help me, I do. They emerged from the cave into the sunlight, the truth heavy between them. Eliza felt both numb and hyper-aware, as if seeing the world through new eyes. I'll ride to the gathering and warn them, Cale said, already moving toward his horse tethered nearby. You should return to Rivercross. It's not safe for you to be involved further. No. Eliza's voice was stronger than she expected. I'm coming with you. My father did this. I have to help make it right. Cale paused, looking back at her. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or something deeper. Then we ride together, he said. But the danger is real, Eliza. If the cavalry comes. I know. She moved to untie Penny. But I can't hide from this truth. Not anymore. They rode hard toward Three Rivers Point, pushing their horses to their limits. The sun climbed high and began its descent as they traveled, neither speaking much, both lost in thought. As they crested a ridge overlooking the river valley, Cale suddenly reined in his horse, raising a hand for Eliza to do the same. In the distance, dust clouds rose from the earth, riders approaching the gathering from the south. Cavalry, Eliza whispered, her heart sinking. We're too late. Not yet. Cale's eyes scanned the valley. They're still miles away. We can reach the camp first if we hurry. They spurred their horses down the ridge, following a game trail that cut directly toward the confluence of rivers. As they rode, Eliza's mind raced. What would she say to the gathered tribes? How could she convince them to flee rather than fight? And what of her father? Was he riding with the cavalry, coming to complete what he had begun 12 years ago? The camp appeared before them as the sun touched the western hills. People moved about in the golden light, unaware of the approaching danger. Cale and Eliza galloped into the clearing, their sudden arrival causing heads to turn and children to scatter. Cale shouted in his native tongue, and instantly the camp erupted into activity. Warriors grabbed weapons, women began gathering children and essential belongings. Maka, Cale's father, strode toward them, his face thunderous. What is this? He demanded in English, glaring at Eliza. You bring a settler here? Cavalry approaches from the south, Cale replied tersely. She came to warn us. The war chief's eyes narrowed. Why would she betray her own people? Because I've seen the truth, Eliza said, sliding from her horse to stand before him. In the story cave. I know what my father did to your people and to mine. Maka studied her face, searching for deception. Finding none, he turned and barked orders to the men nearby. The camp's evacuation accelerated. We should stand and fight, argued a young warrior, brandishing his bow. We have warriors from 3 tribes here. And they have rifles and cannons, Cale countered. This is not the time for battle. As the argument continued, a rider appeared from the east, one of the Okanawe scouts. He dismounted quickly, reporting to Maka in their language. Cale's expression darkened as he listened. What is it? Eliza asked. More riders, Cale translated grimly. Coming from the east. We're being surrounded. Eliza felt cold dread settle in her stomach. My father, she whispered. He knows these lands too well. He's cutting off your escape routes. Maka turned to her, suspicion flaring again. How convenient that you arrive just before this trap closes. No, Eliza protested. I came to warn you, to help. Father, Cale intervened. She speaks truth. I trust her. Your trust may cost us all our lives, Maka growled, but he didn't pursue the accusation. Instead, he turned to organize the defense, positioning warriors at the camp's perimeter. Eliza grabbed Cale's arm. There has to be another way. If they fight, they'll be massacred. Cale's face was grim. The women and children can escape by river. There are canoes hidden in the reeds. But someone must distract the soldiers. I'll go, Eliza said immediately. I'll ride to meet them. My father won't order an attack if I'm in the way. It's too dangerous. It's our only chance. She met his gaze steadily. I brought this on you by coming to the gathering. Let me try to make it right. After a moment's hesitation, Cale nodded. I will come with you. No. Your people need you here. Guide them to safety. She touched his face briefly. Trust me, as I trusted you. Before he could protest further, Eliza mounted Penny and rode south, toward the approaching cavalry. Behind her, the camp dissolved into controlled chaos as people fled toward the river. The sun had nearly set when Eliza spotted the cavalry column, at least 50 mounted soldiers advancing in formation. At their head rode a familiar figure in a trader's coat. Her father. She urged Penny forward, riding directly toward them. When she was within shouting distance, she reined in her horse and waited in the middle of the path. The column halted. William Thornton broke away from the soldiers and rode toward his daughter, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. Eliza, he shouted as he approached. What in God's name are you doing here? Stopping you, she replied, her voice carrying in the evening air. There will be no attack today, father. He reined in his horse a few yards from her. Get out of the way, girl. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me more than anyone. She straightened in her saddle. I know what you did, father. I've seen the painting in the story cave. The color drained from William Thornton's face. For a moment, he looked older, smaller somehow. What nonsense has that savage filled your head with? He blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. I saw the truth. Eliza's voice broke slightly. You led the Shoshone to our wagon train. You sacrificed those people, sacrificed Mother, for money. You don't understand, he hissed, glancing back at the soldiers who waited at a distance. I did what I had to do. For greed, she spat. And now you would kill again to hide your crime. These Indians are a threat to Rivercross. They're only a threat to you. Eliza's voice rose. To your secret. The tribes were meeting for peace until word came of cavalry attacks. You're creating the very war you claim to prevent. William's face hardened. Move aside, Eliza. Now, or I'll have you removed. If you want to attack that camp, you'll have to ride through me first. She stared defiantly at her father. Would you add your daughter to the list of your victims? For a long, tense moment, father and daughter faced each other, neither willing to yield. Then William Thornton made a subtle motion with his hand. Before Eliza could react, two soldiers appeared beside her, grabbing Penny's bridle. Take my daughter back to Rivercross, William ordered. Keep her under guard until I return. No. Eliza struggled as rough hands pulled her from her saddle. You can't do this. I'm protecting you from yourself, her father said coldly. One day you'll understand. As the soldiers dragged her away, Eliza saw movement at the edge of the trees, shadows slipping through the gathering darkness. The tribes were escaping while her confrontation distracted the cavalry. You're too late, she shouted at her father. They're already gone. All you'll find is an empty camp. William Thornton's head snapped toward the distant camp, then back to his daughter. Rage contorted his features as he realized she had delayed him deliberately. Captain, he called to the cavalry officer. Advance immediately. They're escaping. As the soldiers holding Eliza hesitated, torn between their orders, a war cry split the air. Arrows flew from the trees, not aimed to kill but to create confusion. Horses reared and soldiers shouted. In the chaos, Eliza wrenched free from her captors. She ran toward the trees, toward the source of the arrows. Behind her, her father shouted her name. She didn't look back. Ahead, Cale emerged from the shadows, leading a horse. Quickly, he called. Eliza reached him, and he helped her mount behind him. They rode into the deepening darkness as the sounds of confusion faded behind them. The camp? She gasped, holding tight to his waist. Empty, he confirmed. All safely away. Your distraction worked. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by grief. She had lost her father today, not to death, but to truth. The man she had loved and respected was a murderer, a thief, a betrayer of his own people. They rode through the night, following the river north, away from both the cavalry and Rivercross. Near dawn, they stopped in a small clearing to rest the horse. What happens now? Eliza asked as they sat side by side, watching the eastern sky lighten. My people will join with the Arapaho and the peaceful Shoshone, Cale said. We will move north, beyond the reach of the cavalry for now. And me. She couldn't return to Rivercross, not after what had happened. Her father would never forgive her betrayal. Cale took her hand, his touch gentle. You could come with us. The offer hung in the air between them, full of unspoken meaning. Eliza looked at their joined hands, his skin darker than hers, but their fingers intertwined as if they belonged together. I would be an outsider, she said softly. A reminder of those who have taken so much from your people. Or a bridge, Cale countered. Someone who understands both worlds, who could help build a different future. The first ray of sunlight broke over the horizon, painting the world in gold. Eliza thought of the painting in the story cave, the figure of the peacemaker standing between warring peoples. There will be more fighting, she said. Not a question but a statement. Yes, Cale acknowledged. The path to peace is long and difficult. But it must begin somewhere, with someone willing to stand between. Eliza squeezed his hand. Then I will stand with you. In that moment, as dawn broke over a land torn by secrets and blood, something new was born, not just between them, but within her. A purpose. A path forward. The cavalry never found the united tribes. William Thornton returned to Rivercross a broken man, his daughter gone, his secret exposed. The story cave became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking understanding between the peoples. And Eliza, daughter of the trader, became something legend rarely acknowledges, not a warrior or a victim, but a bridge between worlds. Her choice that day by the river changed the course of 3 tribes forever, proving that sometimes the greatest courage is not found in battle, but in the quiet decision to stand for truth, no matter the cost. 5 years later, Eliza stood by the riverbank where her journey had begun, where Cale had pulled her from the waters and into a different life. She held a weathered letter in her hands, the last communication from her father before his death. In it, he had written not of forgiveness or understanding, but of his certainty that she would one day return to her own kind. She watched as Cale, now a respected voice for peace among the United Tribes, walked away from their meeting with government representatives. His path took him into the dusk, toward the mountains where their people waited. Eliza let the letter fall from her fingers into the flowing river. The current caught it, carrying away the last tide of her old life. Then she turned and followed Cale into the gathering darkness, toward the future they would build together, a future born from a secret, a rescue, and the courage to stand between worlds. Total _char_count, 27,833.